Hello and welcome to Book Lovers Companion, the podcast about books, authors, the craft and more. My name is Edith and joining me for this episode is returning guest and noir thriller author Blake Ruman. Hello Blake and welcome back to Book Lovers Companion.
Hello Edith, how are you?
Well, I'm absolutely fine, thank you. And summer is taking a break at the moment in Vienna. So, not so bad at all, I have to say. What is it like at the moment on your end?
Hot.
Oh.
It's very humid. Humid in Florida, so temperatures get up to about, mid-90s.
Oh, that's in the 30s here. Yeah.
If you can't handle the humidity, it's probably not the right place to be.
Oh, yeah. I think so, yeah. It tends to get humid here in Austria as well, but at the moment we have, I can only tell you the Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius today, a bit of rain.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We need it. We need the rain, so that's okay with us. Blake, we are here to talk about your very new book, which came out in April 2025, Never Ends, published again with Hellbound Books. And this book is set in Austin, Texas, and it starts with a biblical scale of event. And
yes.
What can you tell our listeners about this book? As much or as little as you like.
It's sinister. There's obviously, without giving anything away, it's the Church of the Resurrected. It's a sinister story that in the beginning leaves the reader thinking that some heinous crimes have been committed by the lead, but that shortly gets derailed, and you start to figure out that there's more of a spiritual a spiritual sinister element going on. There's a number of people get tangled up in a video game that more or less takes over itself, and just as many of the other books, it leads up into what you would assume when you think you have an idea of what's going on, you'll be thrown for a complete loop. So it's a little different than my others. The other ones seem Goodbye Stranger was a little bit more straightforward in terms of the plot and the direction. Is this one really takes it to we're incorporating a little bit more from other worlds directions on this, so a completely different element that I'm starting to explore in writing. And there's a number of other ones that are coming out as well pretty soon that go along a similar path. So starting to explore the spiritual world, the other side of the veil, and how both sides are communicating to one another at the same time. So and that leaves the reader open to their own imagination and perception, as opposed to a straight story that was given in some of the previous books about terrorist plots and acts that don't incorporate the unforeseen and unseen worlds. So that's this book. It's a I would say it's more of a spiritual thriller.
Interesting. You said that because that was the idea I had when I read about it. And is it something you would say that is for people who gravitate towards noir books, horror books, more interesting to read about the spiritual element, about, like you said, the other side of the veil?
So I think that in current times, um, there's a lot of people asking themselves, not just others around them, but within themselves, they're
Mm,
trying to find truth to get a clear
mm,
idea for themselves of what happens after you pass. What's is there another level of progression? Is what was life like before here? Was there an existence, that you were familiar with? And are they both working together at the same time, or are they completely different environments and elements, all different? Does your spirit remain the same? Does it change? And are things able to be relegated to good and evil, whereas you can actually know what's good or evil, and vice versa? Or do we not really conceive, what is good and evil, and we kind of just create our own man-made philosophies to
mm,
get through? So I wanted to write a book that starts to open questions,
mhm.
leading towards, the reader thinking outside of their traditional, storytelling, and kind of delving a little bit more into their own psyche.
Mm. Without the traditional religions, because you've mentioned the Church of the Resurrected
I
that
didn't
plays
pick
a major part. Yeah.
any particular religion
Mm,
to base off of. I guess you could say that a, a, a mix of multiple different doctrines out there, and then incorporated them
mm,
with, obviously, a creative spin on them to give my own point of view, but nothing that's substantial, or in terms of that's been clearly defined as one particular sect of
mhm,
denomination.
mhm. Would you say in your case regarding this book that one could rightfully say that art is reflecting reality in a way? Because you
I would
mentioned
say that,
times like this.
yeah, I think, you know, especially current times, I really believe that in what we see and hear and who we associate with, it's getting harder to get a
Mm,
gauge on what would be considered right or wrong. And
mm,
we all, as mortals, you know, attempt to create our own spaces of what we've decided, which is good, evil, right, wrong. And this is opening it up to not necessarily there being a such thing as good or evil. There
mm,
is sinister, and there is nefarious, and there's a character in there that presents options, but the ability to choose is still within the right of the person. And so they can choose which direction they're going to go. So they're not necessarily evil or necessarily good. They're who they are in the decision that they currently made. And what makes Never End, um, to start off interesting, is that it appears that that the character is obviously off to a bad start, and you would think that he's one particular direction until you start to realize that you don't have the full picture. And I think it's important in all storytelling to know that you can't really grab the full picture of a story just from the you know, um, first couple chapters. You have to go all the way in to get a better understanding. So that's what I'm trying to present here, is the concept that the reader gets to decide for themselves, but there are choices to be
Mm-hmm.
made.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say? How important is place in this book? You said the story in Austin, Texas. Why not? Let's say
I said
Florida.
it in Austin. I've said, um, I've done some obviously in multiple countries. Domestically, Red Line took place in the East Coast in Maryland. Um, Goodbye Stranger had more of there was a little bit of Texas with
Mm-hmm.
Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
but it was all over. I obviously had it in multiple different states. I'm familiar with um, with Texas. I thought it was a good spot to start, but I guess it wouldn't have necessarily mattered. The next books coming out are once again all over. So
Okay.
it just so where it happened on this particular one.
Okay, so no specific reason for you to say, okay, it fits with the spiritual
It's
thread.
very liberal,
Okay.
and it has uh, a little bit of a dictating influence on, once again, Austin. Texas is more of a conservative state as a
Mm,
whole, but Austin is the subpart that really emphasized the liberal aspect of it.
okay.
So, I mean, if you're going to go anywhere in Texas, for the most part, that you're looking for, that element, you would go to Austin. So I thought Austin would be the right way because it's clearly that much separated from most of the state in
Mm.
terms of spirituality and that direction.
Oh, the liberal enclave, so to speak.
A little bit, yes,
Okay.
sure.
Is Austin also the other version of this of Silicon Valley, or did I get that wrong? Because a lot of tech companies
Yeah,
moved to. Yeah.
Austin,
Okay.
you pretty much, um, yeah, Austin's, I would say, probably, right up there as being, it's a smaller version,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, it's growing pretty quickly. All over Texas is really growing with that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Austin's been like that for probably about 15 years, 20
Mm.
years.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And tell me, where did you find your main character, Dr. John Edom, the surgeon, who is your protagonist in this story? When and where did you find him?
Um, so that character is a little mesh between some of my other characters that I've had in books. Um, I liked his consistency and the qualities of attempting to be, you know, uh, you know, um, just to make the right decisions if given the option. Obviously, he falters at times, but seems on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I f- from the previous books, kind of meshes well with a character that's driven to engage fully in trying to get to the bottom of the resolution of anything that's happening around, as opposed to leaving. And so it just plays well. I think that as far as the particular character, he's just a more of a creation. I thought of him as I was doing Redline, and as I was doing there's another book, two books that I've been working on, and very similar characters. So, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously different. And then the opposition to that character presents more of a charming, nefarious, sinister character
Mm-hmm.
that would be significantly more popular
Mm-hmm.
in in modern day society for all of the bells and whistles that he and the attributes that he carries, but is definitely more geared to a deceptive, deceitful element, and the main character Edom is significantly on the straight and narrow.
Mm. But not without flaws, is he?
With everyone has flaws.
That's good to hear. You're absolutely
Yeah.
correct. I would absolutely agree. And I mean, there is also this other element in your story because you said spirituality is something you explore in this book. But since
I
we
think
talk,
the locust,
yeah,
there's some things that'll throw some people, I mean, there's some biblical elements
yeah,
to it. I certainly, like to derive
mm,
obviously from, I mean, from, you know, uh, historicity,
mm-hmm,
biblical elements, things that are so
mm-hmm,
magnificent in nature
mm-hmm,
that are almost unbelievable to describe in words. You almost visually have to be there to even believe it, or seen through the lens of faith.
yeah,
So that's presented significantly in this book,
mm-hmm,
which had not been in the others.
mm-hmm,
In Kutri, which is, you know, very dystopian, obviously set in the future, you know, a a plague that definitely destroyed, a big chunk of humanity, but it was grounded in events that could significantly, or
mm-hmm,
occur without
yeah.
really being questioned. Whereas this, you really have to put on a different lens when reading.
Mm. But there's also a very modern, I mean, talking about these locust swarms, it's like you said, it's biblical events that can happen in reality. That's where your reference is for this, the spiritual part. Let's put it that way. But there's also the very, very, very modern part in your story, represented, I would say, in part by your main character's wife, who is a game designer. And there's also something mm, going on, not quite as we or someone would expect.
Yes, I mean, it's so that the cover of the book is Sisyphus. So the
Mm,
concept of, you know um, you know always thinking that you're going to get to the end, and right before you're there, the stone rolls down and you're starting again. And she's a genius, and there's significant um uh attributes to the game that start off that get everybody involved in it. It's
mm-hmm.
clever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it just really leads from there. I mean, she's you the deception comes in when you think that, without going too much into it, that everything just seems like a natural day, of
Mm-hmm.
mortality,
Mm-hmm.
when it
Mm-hmm.
really starts to change with the involvement in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I've never written anything like that before, so that was brand new. Enveloping, her in the beginning, obviously that had to get created. And there's also um, two more parts to this book coming out.
Ah,
So it's not,
okay.
it's definitely not left off.
Ah, okay.
This continues. Never end utterly means it never ends.
Okay,
Or
interesting.
at least it'll continue for a little bit.
Okay, well,
But
that's good
those
to know.
aren't the other ones that I was referring to.
Mhm,
Um, I have a novel that's coming out that is based on a on I would say a game show,
Mhm.
but a little much different than Gentleman's Choice, but posing in alternate realities again, but
Mhm.
still like currently
Mhm.
uh viable or set in where you are. I'm working on a that I've been doing, for a while.
Mhm.
It's going to take a while, and then I'll present it to the publisher. But I've been working on a
Mhm.
it seems like modern day, but a completely a different twist on World War II, a historical thriller with a bunch of youth that decide that they're going to more or less like stop the war themselves, and set in Brooklyn. So that's obviously in depth. And then I have a couple others, so it should be all different, completely different genres, but
Yeah.
still with a thriller element, not rooted as much in the next couple in the spiritual element,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
still set in with a that still the good or evil presence,
Mhm.
just not as much as the, other side of the veil
Mhm.
scenario, as
Mhm.
much as this is. You mean the Church of the Resurrected,
Mhm. Mhm.
so it's much different. There's no church element in the next one. There's none of that.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I've enjoyed putting, much effort into them, into all of them.
Yeah, I believe you absolutely. Now you have some interest. Oh, the World War II one. You have a date, when it's finished and when it's done. You have to come back because historical fiction. Bring it on.
Oh yeah. Well, I it's been in my head for a while. So, and I've been, working on that, and then I'll present it to Hellbound and
Mhm.
James, and then, James will go through it. And then, we have a number of other ones that are being worked on, it's just some of them are just getting edited right now.
Mhm.
James
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
editing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have a couple people going through. I mean, the process of editing almost takes as long as the process of actually writing. So
Yep. Yep. Not if
that's
not longer.
that's certainly significant. But the styles start to change. Everything kind of takes on its. Once you have an idea or a
Yeah.
concept of
Yeah.
or the direction of where you want to go, as far as me, and even once it's outlined and you have a clear outline and parameters, and it's having the outline is makes it a bit easier because you
Mhm.
could,
Mhm.
follow,
Mhm.
your obviously your outline and get an idea.
Mhm.
But just as anything else goes, it still starts to take on its own direction.
Yeah.
What I've learned clearly is that sometimes when it starts to go a different path that deviates so much from
Mhm.
your current story, I take that next element that could just lead
Mhm.
it astray, and I put that aside, and maybe that'll be a future
Mhm.
idea to reconsider for a book. But
Mhm.
I try to stick with the path that I'm
Mhm.
on. So some of these novels are are spin-offs of
Mhm.
concepts that came up from writing some of the first novels,
Okay.
so
Okay.
instead of trying to incorporate everything in one novel, which can just be overwhelming, it's too much, I mean, you really wanna stick on the straight path. I try to
Mhm.
take those, I make a note of them, and then if I think that they're capable of turning into their own story, then, I, start to work on those as well.
Mhm. And what helps you to stay, focused on this one line? Because you said, yeah, spin-offs. The ideas are spin-offs from books you have written. And what when while writing a certain book, a certain novel, what helps you to keep on track?
So that's a good question. So I like to finish one thing at a time. I think it's important. I think that there may be like 15 different things I have going on at the same time, and you can't accomplish all 15 at that same particular moment. What I've but sometimes there's so many things going on that you end up doing none of them because you're overwhelmed. So, and I like to finish
Mm-hmm.
what I started. So
Mm-hmm.
when I start a project, I know that it's gonna, be cumbersome and it'll
Mm-hmm.
take up time, and there'll be things that splinter off
Mm-hmm.
into other directions. But I have to stay with that particular project because if I don't, then I won't finish anything. So
Mm-hmm.
I put my mindset into staying completely focused. I would say that I I w- I mean I clearly surround myself with no outside worldly influence.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, for the last couple years when I've been putting all of this work together,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of, my daughter who's
Mm-hmm.
4, I've it's almost impossible to be involved as well in, your normal run of the mill things that everybody's involved. I haven't, whether it be, watching, sporting events or
Mm-hmm.
going to sporting events or watching new movies or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've clearly stayed focused to the task because I
Mm-hmm.
know that it takes all of my focus and I
Mm-hmm.
can't splinter off or I'll go a different direction. So it's daunting,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to be you have to persistent.
Mm-hmm. And when you do this, when you try to stay focused, do you have a room where you put up, I don't know, notes for your books so you can, when you look, I don't know,
I have
at the
um I
computer
have
next to you?
I have I have a room and it's uh covered pretty much with all of the material,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I'm not in the in that mindset of that particular project,
Mm-hmm.
I then take that down
Mm-hmm.
and I reflect on it. And then when I'm ready to go up, I get it all set up the night before
Mm-hmm.
or, the day before so I
Mm-hmm.
can know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go straight at it
Mm-hmm.
with the involvement. And I don't, I stay away from answering my phone. I don't look at any of that. I don't do anything that can clearly take me off that objective.
Mhm. Mhm. And for this particular book, Never End, how long would you say were you completely focused? How long did it take you? You said editing takes as much time up as writing the book, if not even more. So how long are you in this
So Never
mindset
End
for
was
this book?
probably from the process about 3 years,
Hmm. Okay.
you know, um,
Hmm.
which, to somebody that's thinking that, hey, I want to write a book, I've got an idea, how long does it take to write a book? Um, I had Goodbye Stranger in my mind for maybe like 6 or 7 years
Hmm.
before it was actually, turned into something that was that was actually, pen to paper.
Hmm.
Um, and so sometimes it takes 3 years, and then
Hmm.
sometimes it could take 7 or 8. There's been
Hmm.
obviously authors that I'm assuming, can put down things much quicker. If it's a script,
Mhm.
which is a little bit different. Like if I
Mhm.
was to write a script
Mhm.
per se, since it's more dialogue
Mhm.
and well, it's a little bit more dialogue, but it's more, settings.
Mhm. Mhm.
And since the director has such more of an influence, I would say that that would probably, cut my writing time down significantly because there'd be a second party involved.
Mhm.
Sometimes in a movie, you could have your first 5 or 10 minutes can just be the scenes, where there's no words, it's just your imagination or clear as sky, directors posing, giving you a background. Whereas when you're writing, you obviously have to write and describe the elements that are in front of you. A script would be less, but I've done a couple scripts, but I haven't really done much with those. So as far as writing goes, I would say average now it's about 3 years per
Mhm.
book.
Mhm. Okay. And since you said you write different genres, mm, would you say that you have hit the jackpot with Hellbound Books? Because they seem to be quite open for the authors to explore different genres and
Goodbye
to
Stranger
write.
did really well.
Mhm.
And the the books, Gentleman's Choice, Goodbye Stranger, Red Line, Dark Beauty, there was no real hitch when they came out.
Mhm.
They did well,
Mhm.
in terms of reviews,
Mhm.
and th- th- there's no I working with Hellbound has been good. James has faith obviously
Mhm.
in the works that are submitted, and anything that seems like it doesn't fit well in terms of what they're looking for, we would adapt and mold,
Mhm.
but everything seemed to fit pretty well. They're it, my books aren't horror, so there's no element of that, but there's still psychological
Mhm.
thrillers, which
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
times can be even worse than or more scary than
Yeah.
a demon of sorts. So
Yes, indeed, because what's going on in your own mind is sometimes even worse than what people, authors put on paper. I absolutely agree.
sure.
Yeah. I would say that's what makes psychological thrillers so scary, doesn't it? Like you said, I mean, a demon, you can describe how this creature
Because
looks and whatnot, but
with a slasher character or any character that's similar to that, whether it be the movies with any slasher characters or anybody that's just out, that's without any inkling of guilt or remorse, and they're just out to
mm, mhm,
complete
mhm,
their objective, which is generally like some sort of slaughter. What they're gonna do,
mhm.
so you
Yeah,
anticipate it.
yeah,
I mean, it kind of plays a certain direction.
yeah,
The protagonist or whomever it may
yeah.
be hides. They got to find the killer. They got to do this. Whereas mine are a little bit more in the psychological, where it never ends. These are things that can go on, and one person's not out for particular blood on another individual as much as they have an objective that's almost like universal.
Mhm,
And there's there's an element to it that you can think, wow, could this really happen? Whereas as in a slasher or
yeah.
anything that's like, goblin type, that that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Why do you think is this kind of genre so appealing to so many people? Your genre, this psychological thriller, anxiety-inducing reading.
I mean,
What?
I think I believe it all has to do with, where we are in
Mm,
our place in this life. I mean, I believe that people have a lot of questions, and not everything appears as it may seem. That's
Mhm.
how Goodbye Stranger really came to my mind when I did that one, before Never End was even a concept, just
Mhm.
because you have you have a main character that's beloved
Mhm.
by your traditional society, by everybody, but
Mhm.
internally it's a raging beast
Mhm.
that is able to contain emotions, and
Mhm.
so it's not really somebody that should be idolized or mimicked,
Mhm.
but you
Mhm.
wouldn't know that by judging from the outside perspective. And with Neverend, you won't get a clear concept of reality until you start really kind of questioning, the other side of the veil of what's going on in this book,
Mhm.
like, are these people dead? Are they
Mhm.
alive? Are they here with us? And, I think a lot of people, including, I mean, they have questions.
Mhm.
That, they make decisions
Mhm.
predicated on what they believe is right or wrong, but they're not sure. So psychological
Yeah.
thrillers are interesting. I think that it started with Silence of the Lambs for
Mm.
me, because I
Mhm.
grew up in the '90s, where it late, really early '90s is in terms of like when, I obviously that movie came out, but all Thomas Harris books are really gauged towards the psychological
Mhm.
thriller aspect, be it Manhunter or, obviously Black Sunday, Silence of the
Mhm.
Lambs, and you have a character that clearly is dangerous,
Mhm.
but that clear, dangerous character that's, that's brilliant in his execution and his attempt of psychosis in terms of like flattering and charm. He still helps people. He's a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
So on one end, he's doing good for others and helping them
Yeah.
progress, and on the other end, he's filling his own need, which is horrific, and that's a thriller because you
Mhm.
don't know which character you're gonna get. Who's gonna
Mhm.
show up at the door today? Is gonna be Dr. Lecter that's gonna help me because I have problems at home and I need advice, or is it gonna be Dr. Lecter that's, thinking about, a plot to remove me from society, So and I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people encounter friends
Mhm.
or associates, people they work with, maybe they're in the driving and there's somebody in a different car
Mhm.
that is not altogether bad, but at that particular moment, they may be engaged in bad thoughts. They may
Mhm.
be engaged in evil thoughts, and which
Mhm.
can lead them to make poor decisions. And if they don't have a good ground on them, then it spirals out of control. Dr. Lecter spiraled out of control, obviously, and he could never fully get grounded because he could never fully, make clear what his entire purpose was, which turns it into a thriller because you can't control his character.
Mhm.
And in some of my novels, it goes the same. You just don't really know what ends up happening, and in terms of, is there a resolution to those type of individuals or everything? And there's not, because
Hmm.
life, at least in this element right now, is not completely resolved. It's you it's ongoing even when you pass. Here you still left behind anything that was part of you that still may have not been, addressed. And so it clearly goes. So it's a little bit of a thriller altogether.
Mm.
Everybody's life has its own, um, direction, but that direction it takes on its own, roller coaster of emotions that doesn't just
Mm.
involve themselves, but involves everybody around them that decides to
Yeah.
be a a partaker of that particular roller coaster on that day or that weekend, So that's how I kind of decide on the characters in
Mm-hmm.
the book,
Mm.
the direction.
Yeah. Do you think reading those is helpful for the average person? Because aren't we all a little bit afraid of what's deep inside us, what we are capable of, and so we can live through those characters, even the bad ones, or
I think for
especially
some
through the bad
people,
ones?
I think some people they see a nefarious character, somebody who's sinister, and they identify with those qualities that are within them. And then, but generally speaking, they don't go out and mimic that
Mm.
particular
Yeah.
person. But sometimes it's obviously, it's, I mean, it's a good question. I think getting lost in any art form, whether it's painting, whether it's, writing, whether it's directing, whether it's poetry, whatever it may be, is an outlet. And
Mm.
sometimes expressing your emotions where it doesn't impact others directly in the sense that it's like not going to hurt them. It's just
Mm-hmm.
getting your point of view out is good. I mean, you're creating something that didn't exist,
Mm.
because it didn't exist before it
Yeah.
was put on paper. So,
Yeah.
but just like anything else, as you continue to write and journey down the exploration of understanding yourself and, what you gear towards, you start to write differently.
Mm.
And before you know it, I mean, who knows? In 5 years, I may be, you know, writing something that's totally different than any of this, So, but right now, with these coming out, they'll be different. I've tried to stick to, obviously, I like the historical
Mm-hmm.
and I like the biblical,
Mm-hmm.
element to all of them. And then, I mean, I always think that, a thriller adds you need that element,
Mm-hmm.
the gray is
Yeah.
important.
I absolutely agree. That's what makes it interesting, especially if you try to make your characters three-dimensional.
Yes. Or in this sense, like four-dimensional.
Yeah, exactly.
It never ends.
Absolutely. Yeah. You said
Yeah.
you might one day go in a completely different direction. What would be the completely different direction?
Well, um, I think that in the next couple of years, you'll be surprised with some of the books. So they're different direction. I'm heading towards the characters being a little bit more younger and
Mhm.
youthful,
Mhm.
and to mesh well with the current generation that we
Mhm.
have, and so they, a perspective that they would, hop on,
Mhm.
obviously. So I'm with current time. So I'm gonna tone that down. Probably more character driven
Mhm.
novels where the main characters are in their, 20s,
Mhm. Mhm.
teens, early
Mhm.
30s, not as experienced as grown
Mhm.
adults.
Mhm. So more like going towards a coming of age thing?
Yes,
Yeah. Mhm.
a little bit,
Okay. Mhm.
especially figuring themselves out and
Mhm.
going through all the motions to do that.
Mhm.
Which, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a little bit more, is more relevant when they're younger than when they're older and a little bit more established.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, I have a detective in Redline, but that detective has experienced a lot
Yeah.
already, so
Yeah.
he's not new to the concept of
Mhm. Yeah.
investigation. Whereas if
Yeah.
you have somebody who's, completely foreign to it and they're just
Yeah.
starting, there's so many different angles that are going to occupy them in their direction that they're going to be learning. And so it's better at times to go that route right now because it allows for even more dialogue.
Mm. Yeah, understandable.
and
And it,
inner dialogue.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to follow the story along and watch your characters grow. When you say coming of age, watching them grow,
Yes,
making their
and that way those
experiences. Yeah.
characters, if those characters decide, or if it's ever, decided to continue on that path with some of
Mm-hmm.
those characters, they can go on to,
Mm-hmm.
maybe be incorporated, in further novels.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So
Interesting.
I mean, I'm toying around with it. We'll see what happens.
Well, there's quite a lot looking forward to it. And like I said, World War II, your World War II novel, you know,
Oh yeah,
keep
as I
keep
said,
me
I've
in
got
your
a
calendar
bunch of
for
them
that.
that are certainly in my head, and that some of them I've been outlining, and some I've been working on, and then I'll present them.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, keep me in your calendar for that.
I will right when the next one gets released, I will let you know. I'll get it right to you.
Splendid. Wonderful. Uh, Blake, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
Oh, I think this was good. I mean, I think if anybody ever, questions wanting to be a writer,
Mm-hmm.
if they go back,
Mm-hmm.
through this and kind of get an understanding of the setting, the scene that I lay out for myself, it may be a good tool for them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really remove distractions from
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the world.
Yeah.
You have to have your mind has to be clear.
Yeah.
So with an objective that can't be haltered.
Yeah. Good advice.
I
Blake,
appreciate you as always having me.
it was wonderful having you. Thank you so much for making
Thank you,
time.
Edith.
And please wait for me in the green room. I will be with you shortly.
Oh yeah, of course.
Dear listeners, I do hope you enjoyed this episode as much as my guest and I did. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I do hope you will tune in for another episode. Until next time.